Night. This is David Murray. He's going to speak to us about living with depression and how it's hilarious. Crying on the inside, clown. I don't know. David Murray, let's hear it for him.
Okay. How's it going, everyone? Before I go on, I just want to thank you for inviting me to participate in your Ignite event. That I was at the first Ignite, and I kind of gave a goofy presentation about why you should be adopted. Last week in Detroit, we just had our first Ignite Detroit, and my presentation was the official survival guide of the end of the world 2012 edition. So, some fans, thank you. But because this is Ignite Week, I wanted to do something a little more serious, but I promise I won't beat you over the head and get you depressed. So, I think if you want to go for it, I want to talk a little bit about this thing called depression. You know, when you think of depression, what comes to my mind is those goofy commercials you see where, you know, the mom's like, she's at the kitchen table and the kids are in the back worried about mom, and the tag is usually, depression hurts everyone. Well, as goofy as that sounds, that is true. Depression does hurt everyone, and depression is a disease. But we don't know a lot about it. And, sorry, slides going forward? Yeah, there we go, cool. We don't know a lot about what this depression is. A lot of people think it's just like a stigma or a medical situation, but like I said, depression is a disease. And we know it under maybe a couple familiar terms, like clinical depression, bipolar disorder, postpartum depression, seasonal depression. You know, Michigan, love the winters, and you get bummed, so you go down to Florida to make yourself feel happy. But probably the biggest tag that depression is under is this thing called chemical imbalance. Well, what the hell is a chemical imbalance? Well, let's think about Slurpees for a moment. Everyone likes Slurpees, right? Because they come in like all these, they come in all these cool little colors and flavors. They're fun. Well, that's called happy juice. And so what our brain does, it actually creates happy juice in these different flavors, which are really big words I'm not going to try to pronounce right now. But what happens with people who live with depression is that their brain doesn't create this happy juice. So it's empty. It's kind of like when you want to get your Slurpee and they're out of blue raspberry. It sucks. So what we got to do is trick our brains to make more of these Slurpees. The problem with that is you can't really just take like a pill or a shot. It's not like the swine flu. You take a shot and get better. What you got to do is actually trick your brain to make the happy juice. And this can be done with medication or a complete like health regime. So there's a lot of variables involved. And one thing is that there's a stigma around this whole depression thing that people with depression are bored, or they're sad, or they're lazy. It's, you know, when you say, oh, I'm depressed, it's like, well, you know, watch something happy and make you happy. It doesn't really work that way, unfortunately, because depression is a disease. It does affect over 17 million Americans a year. And 1 in 5 adults suffer from depression in a given year. You know, 1 in 4 women will suffer from depression. With men, it's 1 in 8. Our lifestyles that we're creating, these stressful lifestyles of work and anxiety, don't help. So depression's bad. It's not a real fun thing. If you do have it, I would highly recommend not watching any sad movies, like Old Yeller, Beaches, or Dying Young, probably a bad idea. You can basically waste a whole day feeling worthless. You might gain or lose a lot of weight. When it comes to emotional swings, Courtney Love has nothing on us. You could not sleep. A lot of the times you don't feel like eating, and a lot of times you want to isolate yourself into like a corner. Depression feeds on isolation. It's one of the worst things you could probably do. But depression does have benefits. For example, I can't sleep. My chemical imbalance has made my body a little weird, so unless I take something, I'll be up all day. So I get a lot done. You know, if you're an artist, depression is your best friend. How many musicians, songs, poets, artists that we know that just thrive using that creative depression? I mean, this guy, he's like juggling like a fireball, so he's clearly got like a chemical imbalance or something. And let's not forget about the drugs. That's good times. I mean, they come in all sorts of flavors, colors, and I'm pretty sure they just make them up as they go along. Just throw a bunch of names in a hat and they just pull one. And they say, oh, we'll call this one Zoloft. That makes sense. But the reality is depression leads to suicide. And there is a suicide attempt every 17 minutes in the United States. We actually have the highest attempt rate of any country of suicides, with over 1 million suicides attempts a year. And we think about, depression doesn't really care who you are. We look at some of these famous people that have been open about living with depression and how it's affected them. So one thing we want to take away from this is you can't catch depression, so you don't have to worry about that, but it can happen. So what you just got to do is just take care of your body. And quite honestly, just unplug is one of the biggest things you can do. At the end of your day, don't do any work, don't get on the laptop, do something that has completely nothing to do with your job. If you're a friend with someone that has depression, it can be a lot of pressure. You don't know what to do. To be honest, just listen. Just be there. You don't have to be Oprah Winfrey and give them all the answers. A lot of the times they just need someone to be there. If you do have depression, I implore you, don't do this alone. Reach out. This social web is amazing. There are so many support groups and just people and friends that you can meet. You'd be surprised at the support you'll get, and it's important to keep things in perspective. So again, there's not a lot about depression that we know. Next to heart disease, it's one of the biggest diseases in America. So I think we just need to take a little bit of time to just kind of learn more about depression. I know there's several blogs out there and a lot of good resources. So I want to thank you very much for listening for that. If you have any questions, by all means, feel free to ask me. Just for the record, I do live with depression, but I'm certainly not depressed about it. So thank you very much, guys.